No one who had ever met Thomas Crooks could believe that the inconspicuous 20-year-old had almost shot Donald Trump. The FBI is examining every detail of his electronic communications and has already questioned 100 people in his circle, without result. No memberships in organizations, no sick postings in relevant internet forums, no revealing statements to others. Perhaps he enjoyed the idea beforehand that the world would be puzzled about him, that he would remain a mystery forever. A manifesto would have destroyed the aura of mystery and would have contained either directly or indirectly shabby, primitive, and irrational motivations. Since he was considered to be withdrawn in his life and avoided communication, he was never used to saying what was going on inside him anyway. The more silent he was, the more room there would be for wild conspiracy theories and more chaos in the United States after his crime. A study examined 74 incidents of such terrorism. The US president was the main target in 34% of cases. Often the perpetrators want to die themselves in the attack and thereby draw attention to some issue, pursue a political goal, or even save the world. 60% of the attackers had no identifiable connections to any organization. 2/3 had never been to prison in their lives. The attackers often have suicidal tendencies, especially when the target person is protected by the Secret Service. This seems to apply to Crooks. He was considered relatively intelligent and probably expected to be eliminated by police and Secret Service snipers. Many such terrorists are said to have higher education, and most are socially isolated. This is also true of Crooks. A diffuse hatred of successful political figures who take what they want is typical. Trump had gotten away with all sorts of crooked things in his life, while someone like Crooks had to follow completely different rules. Money is hard to come by, and any violation of the countless laws is strictly punished. There are also the typical schizophrenics and psychotics. One of the people investigated heard voices and was firmly convinced that they came from a secret federal government satellite program. The murder of a federal official would lead to the program being revealed. Crooks was exactly the age at which schizophrenia usually occurs. Lynette Fromm had tried to kill President Ford in 1975 because the government was imprisoning cult leader Charles Manson and was destroying the environment. Fromm was suffering from depression and was broke when she met Manson. The cult killed celebrity Sharon Tate and left false evidence at the crime scene to give the impression that African Americans were behind it. They had a vague and confused plan to start a race war. When Fromm pointed the gun at Ford, she was immediately restrained by Secret Service agent Larry Blundorf. Assassins often have multiple goals at once: to end an unbearable life, to change the course of the country, and to become famous posthumously. Crooks chose the formerly highest target, a former president, and was apparently prepared to die on a grand stage in front of the whole world. Lee Harvey Oswald had a cynical Marxist-Leninist strategy. He did not care who held the presidency and assumed that the next president would be not much different from Kennedy. It was all about getting the ball rolling and destabilizing the country. He had a specific escape plan and wanted to travel by bus to Mexico, then find a communist embassy there and get a visa for Cuba. The idea that killing a US president will have a significant political impact is irrational. The system always produces enough new personnel and always has redundancy. The Republican Party could have quickly replaced Trump with Nikki Haley and then probably won the election by a large margin. Investigators are of course looking for a specific trigger in Crooks, some diagnosed illness maybe, or other negative events. He fits the profile of a radical incel who saw no prospects worth living for himself. Crooks was relatively intelligent and could have used obfuscation tactics to research online what the authorities knew about assassins. As a hobbyist programmer, he may have known how to gain access to unsecured or poorly secured Wi-Fi networks nearby. With a throwaway operating system and the Tor network, he could have acquired the essential knowledge. He apparently made no verbal threats beforehand and remained completely under the radar. Perhaps he had a rough idea of the NSA's capabilities as described by Edward Snowden. Crooks had to know that killing Trump would unleash massive chaos in the country. Coupled with his previous silence and lack of a manifesto, all sorts of conspiracy theories would have spread. One would assume he was aware of the wild media narratives surrounding Trump and the Capitol storm event. Crooks was called the school shooter in high school and teased for his poor hygiene, a classmate said. During his freshman year at Bethel Park High School, Crooks became an easy target for bullies who targeted the often lonely teenager, Juliana Grooms told the New York Times. Quote, "The other kids would always say, 'Hey, look at the school shooter over there,'" Grooms recalled. "They teased him about his poor hygiene, his body odor. He was an easy target," she added. Grooms said Crooks definitely stood out as a freshman because he wore baggy jeans and a SpongeBob SquarePants t-shirt. Grooms' description is similar to that of classmate Jason Kohler, who told KDKA that Crooks was bullied relentlessly in high school. Crooks was actually a Republican, but Trump may have seemed like the ultimate bully or Chad to him. Even after successfully breaking into his phone, searching his computer, scouring his search history and bedroom, and interviewing his family and friends, agents have still found no evidence to suggest a political or ideological motivation for the shooting, law enforcement sources told CNN. On Friday, he went to a gun range he was a member of and practiced shooting. A law enforcement official told CNN. The next morning, Crooks went to a Home Depot where he bought a 5-foot ladder, and he went to a gun store where he bought 50 rounds of ammunition. Investigators believe he used his newly purchased ladder to scale a nearby building and open fire on the former president. It seems as if he never had a girlfriend in his life, and that may have compelled him to become a member of the so-called incel culture. This phenomenon has now been recognized as another category of terrorism. It is sometimes tied to regular styles of terrorism, but it can also occur on its own. There was a shooting in Plymouth in August 2021 in England. 22-year-old Jake Davison killed 5 people and then shot himself. He was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. He became interested in weapons, and he was also a loner. COVID lockdowns made him even more unstable. On the internet, he was uploading videos under the name Professor Waffle. He talked about incel culture. He was complaining that he was not having a teenage romance, and he complained about the so-called chads. This is a slang term for sexually active, attractive men. You know, those kind of men who get the most attractive women, or most women in general. So researchers are finding more and more links between the incel phenomenon and regular types of terrorism, political extremism. I've linked some of the studies in the description below. There are even many parallels between the incels and Islamist jihadist terrorism. The Center for Strategic and International Studies also looked at this and explains some of the triggers and some of the common attributes that you can find with these people. So Trump's history, especially his history with women, his status and his money, always getting away with things, that made Trump into a sort of super Chad or giga Chad, kind of the enemy, the person to punish. Then we had a 21-year-old shooter, or a 21-year-old terrorist named William Atchison. This was the 2017 Aztec High School shooting. He was frequenting very well-known forums, white power websites, and all that sort of stuff. He even called himself Future Mass Shooter. And he said the following: "Work sucks, school sucks, life sucks, I just want to get out of this." Alec Manassian admitted to have attacked people with a truck. This was in 2018. He told police he was radicalized online by other incels. Shortly before the attack, he posted a message on Facebook, and it says, "The incel rebellion has already begun. We will attack all the Chads and the Stacys. Long live the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger." Elliot Rodger, he published a 141-page long incel manifesto before he killed several people in 2014. He became a hero of the incel community. Incels are normally in their mid-20s, roundabout, heterosexual, have no children. They're regular middle class or lower middle class. Many of them have more education, and they either live at home with their parents or they rent. Typical is our mental health issues, high incidence of depression and suicidal ideation. The Pew Research Center looked at this, and they found that quite a few of these incels tend to the left. They're not all right-wing or attracted to a right-wing ideology. So a lot of this actually fits Mr. Crooks. So maybe he was a schizo, and maybe he was a radical incel. Maybe he thought that he was never going to have a pleasant life. He would never have a relationship or a decent relationship. He hated everything, and he just wanted to end it all and remain a mystery forever. It's possible that he had implemented some kind of a dead man switch in case he dies. So maybe there will be something released automatically in the near future. So when the dust has settled, maybe he will finally, or you will finally get a statement from him after his death. So he was regarded a Republican. He was a registered Republican. So why would he shoot the Republican candidate? Well, the Republicans or aspects, parts of the Republican Party, they seem like, or could have seemed like, a conspiracy of Chads to him. You know, these elite men who get all the women and get away with everything. The researchers Hoffman, Ware, and Shapiro in 2020 figured out that 70% of the users of the incels.co forums were depressed, 25% were on the autism spectrum. The researcher Moskalenko and his colleagues in 2022, they reported a staggering percentage of depression and anxiety, so it's almost like 100%, when they were questioning 274 incels. We get a photo from Mr. Crooks from 2020. This is a school photo. He has like a mousy hairstyle, glasses, braces, and he's wearing a t-shirt with the United States flag and Mount Rushmore. So he tried to be a conservative. He wanted to be a conservative. So this was kind of his way maybe to create an identity for himself. He tried to associate himself with Americana. In that year, COVID pandemic happened. He probably became more isolated and his life became worse. He also wore a t-shirt during his attack from Demolition Ranch. This is a famous YouTube channel which deals with firearms, and it's a funny channel. It's meant to be funny and entertaining. There is a political undertone, of course, but they usually stay out of any political discussions. And then we saw a video from Matt Carrica, who runs this channel, Demolition Ranch. And he's, of course, shocked that somebody like him would buy a t-shirt and then commit such an act. So we will not solve this case in a matter of just a few days. These things oftentimes take a lot of time. We do have to wait for more information from the authorities. And there's the question of, will they release everything that they can find? What about the witnesses talking to federal agents? Are these witnesses willing to be open about everything, especially when it comes to bullying? Because some of these people that were questioned may have been involved in bullying, or may have seen a lot of the bullying, but maybe haven't done anything, so it's not entirely clear if we're getting honest statements from these people. While everybody was looking at these events, that's of course when different groups, different influencers try to present a narrative already, as if they know what this is all about, as if they know what it all means. Now, you have to investigate in all possible directions. This is, of course, also what the FBI is doing. They're not ruling anything out, but they haven't seen any sort of accomplices or anything that would point into the direction of powerful networks possibly behind this guy. Now, of course, there may be some foreign networks behind this guy. Maybe they used cutouts. You may have used in-between contact people to work on him in order to maintain operational security, so you couldn't trace back those contacts to a foreign country. This is also something that has to be looked at. Based on what we know so far and how much he stayed under the radar and he wouldn't be talking online, he wouldn't actually leave any traces behind, this also points at a certain level of tradecraft or spycraft. So he was either doing this from his own motivation, because maybe he wanted to remain a mystery forever, because he thought that would be more powerful and create more chaos, or he was in contact with people and they taught him that sort of spycraft to stay hidden. That's very much possible. So you can expect these FBI people to have asked everybody who's ever known him, asked these people, do you know about any sort of contacts of this guy? Was he talking to strange people? Was he talking about meeting new people? Is there anything of that sort? On my show with Jeff Nyquist, I already talked about some of these narratives that were being spread around over the last few days and how little sense they make. Quite a few people started immediately to print t-shirts with the Trump photo and capitalize on that event. And they were saying stuff like, they shot at Trump and they missed. But who are they? Who are they thinking of? Do they mean the Democrats? Would the Democrats be so stupid to do this? Or some pro-democratic circles, would they really be so stupid to use a 20-year-old nobody who was most likely going to fail? And even in the case that Trump dies, what would then the result be? The Republican Party doesn't need Trump. They can use somebody else for the race. They can use Nikki Haley and win by a landslide, and they can use the martyr status of Trump to get an additional boost. So that doesn't make much sense at all. It was more likely to cause general chaos. So everybody is accusing everybody, and to get more into the direction of that civil war narrative. Now, of course, that's mostly a silly narrative, because you wouldn't have a serious civil war without some established players behind it. Most Americans, they live paycheck to paycheck. They cannot really fathom entering some sort of a stupid civil war with no understanding of what the resources of this are, how long this was going to take, who takes care of your children, who pays your rent or who pays your mortgage, who takes care of your family, who takes care of your parents and all of that. But it would have certainly caused a lot of chaos, and that chaos may be in the interest of a foreign power. Obviously, I will continue to investigate that case. That being said, it may never be truly solved if this guy was acting completely alone, or maybe if he had some people he worked with, if they stayed completely silent, and nobody cared about this Crooks guy. Nobody cared who he was hanging with. Nobody cared what he was doing when nobody was looking. We may never actually solve the case, and in that situation, we have to go on with the facts that we know and have to come up with some reasonable interpretations and a way to move forward.